All right, let's talk about methane. You hear about it all the time in climate discussions, right? It's usually painted as this supervillain, especially when we talk about farming and agriculture. But we're going to dive into this because the real story is way more complicated and honestly, a lot more interesting than what you probably read in headlines.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen pictures just like this one. The cow, maybe a smokestack in the background. The message is pretty clear, right? Livestock equals climate change. And look, it's not that that's wrong, but is it the whole story? Is the relationship between that cow and our climate really that simple? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack.
Okay, so let's get right to the big number that always grabs the headlines. 26 times. Molecule for molecule, methane is about 26 times more powerful than carbon dioxide when it comes to trapping heat. I mean, that's a huge number, and it's exactly why methane gets so much attention. But here's the thing. That number, all by itself, it can be really, really misleading. So to really understand what's going on, we've got to look at methane's unique role in the climate. It's powerful for sure, but it's also, as you're about to see, one of the most misunderstood pieces of the entire climate puzzle.
Okay, first things first. Where does all this methane even come from? Well, it's a mix of both natural stuff and, of course, human activity.
And when we zero in on the human-caused sources, what scientists call anthropogenic sources, the picture gets really clear. Look at this. Agriculture is the biggest piece of the pie by far, coming in at over 44%. That's more than the entire energy sector and all of our landfill waste put together. Wow.
But even that's not specific enough. We can drill down even deeper, because just saying agriculture is kind of painting with a broad brush. The real story is much more specific.
And here it is. This is really the heart of it. Just look at that chart. The huge majority, we're talking 2/3 of all agricultural methane, comes from this one thing: enteric fermentation. That single process is responsible for almost 30% of all human-caused methane. Everything else, like rice farming, is a distant second.
So what in the world is enteric fermentation? Sounds complicated, but it's not. It's basically just a fancy term for how animals like cows and sheep digest their food. They have these amazing microbes in their stomachs that break down tough stuff like grass. And a byproduct of that whole process, methane, which, yeah, they mostly burp out. It's a totally natural biological thing.
Okay, hang on, because this next part is the absolute key to understanding everything. This is the big aha moment. You simply cannot think about methane in the same way you think about CO2. They act like completely different animals once they're up in the atmosphere. And here's why. Methane is what we call a short-lived gas. It goes up, it does its warming thing, but then it breaks down and is naturally removed from the atmosphere in about a decade. Poof, gone. Carbon dioxide, it's the complete opposite. It's a long-lived gas. When we put CO2 into the air, a big chunk of it stays there for hundreds, literally hundreds of years, just building up and continuing to trap heat. This difference is so important. So let's try to visualize it. And the best way I've found to think about it is with a simple analogy. Let's talk about a bathtub. Okay, so picture two bathtubs. The CO2 tub has its tap turned on, but the drain is almost totally clogged. So what happens? The water level just goes up and up and up. It just keeps accumulating. That water level is the warming. Now, picture the methane tub. The tap is on, but the drain is wide open. So yeah, the water level rises for a little bit, but pretty soon, the amount of water going down the drain equals the amount coming from the tap. The water level finds a new, higher level, and then it just stays there. It stabilizes. This simple analogy shows us we're dealing with two completely different types of pollutants. CO2 is a stock pollutant. It stacks up. It accumulates. Methane is a flow pollutant. It flows through the atmosphere. It's added, but it's also removed. And this leads to a critical conclusion. Constant CO2 emissions mean the warming just keeps getting worse and worse. But constant methane emissions? That leads to a stable amount of extra warming. And check this out. It also completely changes what happens if we stop emitting them. If you turn off the CO2 tap, what happens? Well, the bathtub is still full of water. The warming we've already caused sticks around for a very, very long time. But if we turn off the methane tap, the water level actually starts to go down pretty quickly as the drain does its work. We could actually cause some cooling. So, if they act this differently, it begs a really big question, right? Why in the world do we so often measure them with this same exact ruler? And it's not just us wondering about this. This quote from one of the sources we looked at says it perfectly. The way we usually talk about carbon dioxide equivalents, or CO2e, it just doesn't do a good job of capturing how different these gases really are.
The standard way of doing things is a metric called GWP 100. And what it does is it looks at a single burst of methane, and then it kind of smears out its powerful but temporary warming effect over 100 years. The problem is, by doing that, it ends up treating methane, our flow pollutant, as if it were a stock pollutant like CO2. And as we've just seen, that's just not how it works.
But there's an alternative being proposed called GWP star, and it's designed to fix this very problem. Instead of looking at a single puff, it looks at the rate of change. It's basically asking a different question. Are our methane emissions increasing? Are they staying the same? Or are they decreasing? It's a metric that's built from the ground up to measure a flow.
Let me put it this way. Under the old GWP 100, a herd of cattle that stays the same size year after year is treated as a constantly growing climate problem. But under GWP star, that stable herd is seen as maintaining a stable level of warming. It's not actively making things worse. Now, if that herd gets bigger, GWP star would show a big warming impact. And if the herd shrinks, it would show a cooling impact. See? It's all about the chain.
Okay, so once you grasp this distinction, it really changes how you have to think about our climate strategy. It completely reframes the game plan.
What this all means is that we actually have two separate but equally important jobs ahead of us. Job number one, cut methane. That's our fast-acting lever. It can slow down the rate of warming right now and give us some breathing room. But job number two, and this one is absolutely non-negotiable, is to get CO2 emissions down to zero. That is the only way to stop the planet from warming up in the long run.
So if you remember just one thing from all of this, let it be this. Cutting methane is a huge opportunity. It buys us precious time. It can even provide a real cooling effect. But it's only by getting carbon dioxide emissions to net zero that we can actually stop the planet's temperature from continuing to rise for good. And that leaves us with one last question, bringing it all back to that bathtub. So many of our policies, our headlines, and our debates treat these two gases as if they were the same. But now that you've seen the science, you have to ask yourself, should we really be treating a running tap the same way we treat a blocked drain?